Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Clear Politics Takeaway for Thursday, February 4th, 2021. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of Real Clear Politics, joined by, you're not Carl Cannon, you're Phil Wegmann, our White House reporter. Hey, Phil.
Hey, Tom. How's it going?
Thanks for standing in for Carl. He's fly fishing up in the mountains somewhere, and I'm sure it's nice and warm there where he is. So, Phil, let's talk about what happened in Washington yesterday, particularly in Congress. Let's start with this vote. Leadership vote, Liz Cheney, secret ballot. 61 Republicans voted against her. I think 145 for. She remains in leadership, despite the fact this was built up to be, that it was going to be a close vote, that she might actually lose her leadership position. She had a lot of vocal critics. Some of them were saying they had the votes. Clearly, they did not. What did we learn, if anything, from yesterday's vote?
We learned that it's worth taking Liz Cheney and leadership writ large as critics on the right side of the aisle with a grain of salt. We've been hearing them beat the drum for some time. They're very angry with Liz Cheney. She is the third-ranking Republican, and they're angry with her because she voted to impeach President Trump. They thought that as conference chair, that was undercutting them. But for the last couple of weeks, we have been hearing again and again publicly from some of these vocal members that not only did they have the votes, but her exit from that position was imminent. Well, then there was a 5-hour meeting, then there was a secret ballot, and this morning Liz Cheney still has her spot. I would caution, though, I think that some leadership allies are taking a victory lap. But this is 60 votes against someone in leadership. Remember, John Boehner got the boot after 17 of these House Freedom Caucus members voted to oust him. So clearly, there's some insubordination on the right.
Well, and there's the whole other issue of how she's going to have to deal with voters back home and what they have to say when she is obviously up for re-election in 2022. The other issue at the Capitol, Phil, is Marjorie Taylor Greene. The vote that's going to take place today in the House to strip her of her 2 committee assignments. Democrats and the media have been promoting her as sort of the face of the Republican Party. I noticed Nancy Pelosi sent out a press release calling Kevin McCarthy the Representative Q from California, meaning QAnon, which I thought was a little bit petty coming from the Speaker's office, but nevertheless, that is the plan. What's the sense among Republicans on the Hill in terms of how Marjorie Taylor Greene is being elevated by the media to be sort of the face of the Republican Party? Are they angry about that? Do they feel like they need to push back on that? What are Republicans thinking?
Well, I think that the moment where Pelosi calls Kevin McCarthy the Q member from California, that's a nice encapsulation of where things are. Democrats see Representative Greene as a cudgel that they can just beat Republicans over the head with. And I think that the mood from rank and file Republicans is one of frustration. The majority of the House Republican Conference doesn't believe in QAnon. They don't believe in space lasers. These things are not, shared opinions of a lot of rank and file members. But I think that there is a frustration that almost every member of the Republican conference has been asked this question. And they're, wondering, what about, some of the bad actors on the other side? Are Democrats asked continually about some of the comments that were controversial that were made by Representative Ilhan Omar? So I think it's human and it's understandable that Republicans would react that way. But if you're Marjorie Taylor Greene, the committee assignments aren't necessarily the most important thing. She's going to walk away from this as a martyr to her supporters, raise a bunch of money. The win for her is that her own party didn't cast her out.
Yeah, and on the other side, there was some news yesterday regarding one of the more prominent members of the Democratic House Caucus, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She had done this Instagram Live where she, sort of recited her where she was on January 6th, and then she was, in her office and fearing for her life, and there were people outside, slamming on the door and yelling, "Where is she?" And she was, very visibly upset as she recited this. And then it came out yesterday that she was actually not in the Capitol building itself. She was in her office in the Cannon office building, which is across the street and connected to the Capitol by tunnels. And so suddenly she's on the defensive, and Alexandria Ocasio-Smollett is trending on Twitter. So what tell me about this, and she's obviously a prominent Democrat, a target of Republicans because they want to make her the face of the Democratic Party, and here she is getting caught in if you don't want to call it an outright lie, at least an exaggeration, an embellishment of what happened to her on January 6th.
Well, I would say not only do Republicans want to make AOC the face of the Democratic Party, in large part, Democrats have welcomed that just in terms of some of her policy agenda, which has made its way into the White House priority with things like Green New Deal. I think that we all if you ignore AOC, you do that to your own detriment. But I think that this story is so interesting because of the stature that she has, like you just mentioned. Is it possible that she mistook the police officer who's banging on her door as a rioter? Yes, that's certainly possible. But this is one of these stories where it just doesn't seem to completely check out because she was not in the Capitol. She was in the Cannon office building. Yes, some members of Congress who I talked to that day, were sheltering in place in their office buildings. Eventually, some of those office buildings were evacuated. But that doesn't change the fact that AOC said that she thought that rioters were coming after her. Representative Nancy Mace, a freshman Republican who has been more than critical of the previous administration, who has been more than critical of the people who rioted, just tweeted out that rioters were never in the Cannon office building. And I think that that's sort of where the debate will end, because I don't think anyone's going to be, holding members to account for these types of arguments.
All right, we will leave it there. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of Real Clear Politics.
I'm Philip Wegmann, White House correspondent for Real Clear Politics.
And be sure to join us tomorrow for our weekly news wrap-up. This has been the Real Clear Politics Takeaway for Thursday, February 4th, 2021.